What is up, guys? Back again with another video, and I have just returned from Rio de Janeiro, and I want to, in this video, kind of have a comparison and talk about some of the differences and even similarities between Rio and Medellin, just in case any of you are planning on visiting there or maybe potentially want to live there. Now, I do want to say that I was only there for 7 days. I do not think this is a sufficient amount of time to really get a feel for a city. I think you at minimum need at least a month, but I'm going to still share my experiences with you guys within that week. So starting off with number one, and I think this is always an important topic whenever you are traveling, and that is going to be safety. So from what I've heard, most Brazilians will say that Rio is not safe or it's unsafe, but for the most part, if you ask any of these locals, well, have you ever been robbed or you've ever been in some situation where it was really dangerous? And most of them, or almost all of them, will say no. So yes, there is an element of danger, but I do think that this probably exists more in the favelas. Also, if you are being very flashy, like carrying your having a gold chain or some type of flashy jewelry, then yeah, you will be making yourself a target. And that's pretty much any Latin American country that you go to. But in the time that I was there in that week, Copacabana and Ipanema were the main two parts, and Lapa, which is a party area. Those were the main areas that I were in. I never felt unsafe at all. Never felt in danger. And for the most part, Ipanema and Copacabana are pretty safe pretty much any time of the day or night for the most part. Can't say the same if you're going too far out of that. Also as well in Lapa, which is where a lot of the partying is done. And the nighttime, I never really felt unsafe there as well. So yeah, you may have some sketchy characters or people, but like I said, for the most part, never felt unsafe. And I actually was not in just the main strip of Lapa. I was actually in some of the back streets to go to some of these places that they had there. So for the most part, I would say Rio is fairly safe. I'm not going to say it's 100% safe, but like I said, I'm only basing my experience off of 1 week of being there and generally staying within the touristy areas. Now, comparison Rio to Medellin, I would say they're probably equally about as safe. Like I said, I was only there a week, and within that week, I didn't feel like I was any more in danger there than I have been living 1 year here in Medellin. So I would say I would give them equal on this. I would say they're maybe tied. Basically, as long as you are not being super flashy or showing off as far as money or anything like that, then you pretty much won't have any problems. Now, I have heard of some people getting stuff taken on the beach and stuff like that, but in general, if you're leaving valuables unsupervised, there's a huge chance. In Latin America, yeah, they're going to be stolen, so I don't find that surprising. So this next one is going to be cost of living. So I did my research before I did go to Rio, and I already knew in advance that Rio was going to be more expensive than Medellin. That's pretty much everything from Ubers to food to housing. Airbnb, which is what most foreigners or what most of us would be using, definitely is much more expensive in Rio than it is here in Medellin. I think a part of that is just because there's a high demand and not enough supply, and then also there just is nowhere else to build in that area. So unless they continue to go up, which I don't think they're going to do. So it's just the existing buildings that are there and that have been there. So Airbnbs are pretty expensive, more expensive than Medellin. So I would give Medellin the win on this one for cost of living. It's definitely cheaper. I have a friend who I went with. He continued off to some other parts of Brazil, and he's already told me that those areas are cheaper, at least food-wise, and food-wise and Airbnb-wise, than Rio was. So definitely it's going to be more expensive if you do decide you want to either live or go to Rio. Much cheaper than the United States or Europe, but not the cheapest city, or I would say most affordable city in Brazil. All right, so now we're gonna talk about weather. I believe I got lucky, or maybe just January is one of the better months to go. I do know that in Brazil, or in the Rio region or area, their summer is normally what would be the winter in the United States. So it's in that kind of August, September, October, November, December-ish kind of time of the year. And for the most part, we have pretty sunny days. I don't know if it's just this time of the year, but the sun does rise extremely early. It's probably around like almost 4:30 a.m. or close to 5 a.m. You have sunrise already. So it is a very early start there, and the sun does set fairly early. Well, no, fairly late. I would say it was setting around 6 p.m. at some days. Some days a little later, 6:30, closer to 7. So early sunrise, late sunset. So you have some extremely long days there. Weather was extremely hot. Fortunately, there was no rainy days. Just the last day I left, it was extremely foggy. But I'm not sure if that burned off because I did leave early in the morning. Now, the sun is extremely strong there. You definitely got to use sunblock. For weather, just depending on what you're into, I would say Medellin may be slightly better just because it is pretty stable as far as the temperature all year round, versus in Rio it can it can be almost 90 degrees one day, versus here in Medellin, I would say the worst you're going to get is maybe 80, 85 tops. At night in Rio, it is fairly warm. I do give that to Rio.
Oh, nice! Eles estão no Rio, gente. Olha isso. Eles são tão parecidos. Eles parecem irmãos. Olha isso.
Rio, the weather is pretty good there in the nighttime. Also, I would say it's pretty warm. That you still have a lot of people hanging out at the beach, playing foot volley or going in the water as well. So definitely, I would say at least in January, good weather for the most part. Just very hot. All right, so now I want to talk about food. Food, by far, I gotta give it to Rio. Rio has much better food than Medellin. Their food is seasoned well. They also, as well, I think it's just because they have a lot of diversity there. You can find a little bit of everything. You can find that here as well in Medellin, but there it's just overall the food is just better. I don't know how exactly to explain it, but definitely much better than it is here in Rio. The food, here in Medellin. Medellin, the food tends to be very bland, very simple. If you go to some of the finer dining restaurants, you can definitely find, I would say, some okay food, but it's not anything amazing, anything to write home about. So I definitely give food to Rio for that. Just the seasoning, taste, everything, definitely a lot better. As far as nightlife goes, Rio has a very, I would say, robust nightlife. It's very vibrant. A lot of people go out. I think also too, the city just feels like it has a much different energy to it, and I would say a part of that is definitely because there's just more people, with there being anywhere from 11 to 12 million people in Rio, and there only being between maybe 3 to 4 million here in Medellin. So it's just a lot of different things to do there. I would say, in my opinion, I think there is more to do in Rio than there is to do in Medellin. A lot of times it feels like with Medellin, when it comes to nightlife, really the only thing there is to do is just party. There is, maybe going out bowling or something like that, but to maybe out to eat. But in general, the main thing to do here is party, which I felt like in Rio, there's people out going to the beach, there's people out playing sports or foot volley, there's people out running or exercising, there's, you have it here too as well, a lot of places to go out and see some live music or whatever, but just overall, it felt as if there is just so much more to do in the city that, just in the week I was there, I wasn't able to actually fully explore, but definitely feel like there's more to do. So I'm going to give nightlife to Rio, but just slightly on this one. Talk about the language barrier. Now, being someone that has experienced the frustration of living here in Medellin for a year, not really knowing great Spanish, slowly learning Spanish, finally getting up to like a B1 or somewhat, I would say, conversational. I understand how hard it can be to not be able to understand and communicate things firsthand. So it definitely was very frustrating going to Rio. And Portuguese, I have to say, is a very, very hard language, not only to just speak, but as well to understand. Now, I will say knowing some Spanish did help me understand some things and help me communicate with some people there. You do get a very small amount of people who understand Spanish, a small amount of people who can speak English, so the primary language is going to be Portuguese. Definitely the more you get outside of your touristy areas. So the language barrier is going to be a huge barrier to entry when it comes to Rio, or I would say just in general Brazil, is that you really need to know some, if you can, some Spanish, but primarily know some Portuguese or no Portuguese. It doesn't have to be necessarily fluent, but it definitely helps if you do, because it was very frustrating going through this process all over again of not understanding people, not being able to communicate with people, at times not having cell phone service and being able to use a translator to translate and actually talk to people. So if you're not going to be just going there to deal with pay for play women, and just staying in like your major, I'll say even in the touristy areas, most people aren't going to speak English or speak or understand a lot of Spanish. So in general, just Portuguese is going to be what you're going to have to speak. Can you survive for a short period of time there without knowing, or being fluent in Portuguese? Sure. A lot of tourists do it, but they're staying there a few days, a week, maybe 2 weeks, max a month, and that's it. But if you're planning on going there long term, you got to have some Portuguese. Now, in my opinion, I would say I think coming now here comparison to Medellin, I think Spanish is a little bit easier to learn. It still is a hard language to learn, but it's a little bit easier than Portuguese. And as well, I would say, here, if you don't have Spanish, it is going to be hard to communicate with people and do things here. So I'm going to give both of these a tie as far as language barrier. what you know of the language will determine how well, or what you can essentially do in that city. So people are friendly when you go out, and you try to talk to people. They'll try, but like I said, I think in both places, Medellin and also in Rio, things open up more. Your experiences change once you know either Spanish if you're here in Rio, or Portuguese if you are in Rio. All right, so now I want to talk about transportation. If you're staying in general in either Rio, let's say Copacabana, Ipanema, in those two general areas, you can get around fairly easy. You can walk most places, or they do have these little like electric scooters and bikes and things like that you can use if you're just going a short distance. If not, Uber for the most part will get you around fairly easily. I didn't take any taxis until I really know a city well. I try not to really deal with taxis. I would say if you are going to live in Rio long term, like you plan on retiring there and living there, I do think it would be beneficial to get a car, just because Ubers are not the cheapest there, I would say, and they do tend to add up. So if you're having to use Uber every day and you're not just staying local in your local area, then you can probably almost end up paying what a car note would be just at Uber. So it would be more beneficial to you to have an Uber also, have a car. And also too, it's would be a bit of a status symbol as well, and show that you're more anchored, or you have more roots connected there, which long term helps you with dating in that specific market. So other than that, I didn't really bother on taking any trains or metros or anything like that. So versus here in Colombia or in Medellin, we have a metro, we have Uber. Uber is a lot cheaper. Also, you have other apps like InDriver, which also can get you can be pretty cheap as well. So I would say, I didn't really explore the transportation fully in Rio, so I don't really want to try to rate them on transportation, but I would say, given that it's a city with 11 million to 12 million people, transportation has to be fairly good there, versus here in Medellin, we don't even have a metro or a subway system. We have a metro, but just not a subway system, and the metro here only goes north to south. All right, so this last topic is going to be girls or dating. Now, I want to start off by saying I do not think a week is enough time. To be realistic, I would say 2 weeks, 3 weeks still probably isn't a good enough time in Rio to fully be able to date properly. In the week I was there, I did try to set up some dates, but women there tend to be very, I would say, flaky or just poor with communication as far as not responding if you're going through dating apps. Now, I know dating apps is not the best way to go, but being that I was there for a bachata conference or festival, I had very little time to kind of venture out and do much cold approach or approach girls on the beach. So I'm mainly basing this off of trying to meet girls through their Instagram or on dating apps like Tinder or Bumble. Bumble, I tend to not have very much success there. So Tinder, I would say, is probably your go-to. I did get more matches on Tinder. Like I said, responses tend to be a little slow, or were slow for me. So as far as cold approach, I didn't find any girls that were overtly interested or showing IOIs. But like I said, I probably just wasn't there long enough to really get an idea of dating there. So I didn't we did go out to a place on Monday, which on Mondays the place to go to is a place called Pedro de Sal, and this is where a lot of Brazilians go, but there's also a lot of foreigners there as well. But good place to mingle and talk to and meet people. A couple of girls that I'm going to show here, we met their group. They actually spoke English somewhat, but very, very friendly. This is in general, most people there, most women there are friendly. Same here as in Medellin. And if I had to put Brazilian women against women here in Medellin, and this is just my personal preference, I'm going to say that women here in Medellin look better. Just on average, I see more women that I'm attracted to here versus in Rio. I didn't see that as much. Now, there are more natural women there. You're not going to see as much surgeries. You're not going to see as many veneers, nose jobs, boob jobs. You don't really see a lot of BBLs here. I didn't really see it there either. But like I said, I was only there for a week. But I do have to say, I do think there are just way more attractive women here in Medellin. The trophy to Medellin as far as for looks. But if you are into more natural women or women that are just more diverse, or you want more diversity, meaning you don't want women that just only look Paisa or Colombian, then yeah, you would definitely enjoy Rio better. But for me personally, I'm into Latinas, so I want my women to look Latin or look Latina. So for me, the Paisa look does it, or the Colombian look does it for me. But it's all based on your taste and your preferences, and what your type is. For me, my type is Latina. So, but there are some definitely very beautiful women in Rio. Before everyone comes for me in the comments, you can find beautiful women there, and if you are there for a good extended period of time, you definitely will find something you like. It's just overall, do you connect with the city, and does the city resonate with you? For me personally, I still think at this point in time, not saying I can't change my mind, but at this point in time, I still think Medellin is a little bit better. It doesn't have a beach, but I'm not a big beach person to begin with, so that's not a huge deciding factor for me. Rio is extremely beautiful. I think it is more beautiful. The city itself is more beautiful than Medellin. So I do have to give Rio that. And I think a part of it is just because of, it's a mixture of beach and urban and all that, which just makes it more beautiful looking as well with the mountains. You have pretty much everything as far as you have your urban part, you have your mountains, you have your beach. It's just a mixture of all of it. It just makes for extremely, extremely beautiful skyline and city views versus here in Medellin, all we have is just apartments, so, and there is mountains as well, but they're just not kind of mixed into the city as much as it is with, I would say, with Rio, mixed with the water, mountains, and city part. So, yeah, that's it for this video. Hopefully, you guys found this information useful, and I'm gonna say if you found this information or you find these videos helpful, please like and subscribe, or just hit the like button, and definitely leave comments because I do read them. I try to respond to everybody, but it also helps me know that, hey, you guys are watching the videos and find the information useful. So, and until the next one, peace.